Yeah, I think it's actually too thin to jam, which is kind of wild to say. Needs to work 40-something% of the time, and I just think that they got to be more than 40% full of shit. Gonna put the expression deuces never loses to the test. Boom. Myth unbusted. All right, here we go. 8-9 suited, gonna be in open from the button. King high boards, I think you could go a number of different directions. My hand doesn't exactly want to bet, but I think my range can bet. So gonna start out by betting 70% and essentially just be one and done. Maybe bet the turn if I turn like a 7 or a 6, but in general, yeah, just one and doneing there. Not going to VPip, ace jack off, facing what is a hijack open. Pocket kings, that's a pretty good hand. One could say that it is a 3-bettable hand facing an open. Have the villain in the 1 seat tagged as a white belt, so hopefully they hop in the mix. Hopes are dashed. Hopes are double dashed. A7 off will also be in open from the small blind. Not the best of hands, but again, every range has got a bottom. Blind versus blind, it's going to be defending the 7-4 suited. Not the greatest of flops for the 7-4. Facing a third with backdoor straight, backdoor flush. We could make, pretty clear argument for defending facing a third, but I think, this is really cusp facing a third and going to continue with any pair, any front door draw, but, and some of the better backdoor draws, but I just think this is a little bit too weak to continue with. Ace-9 off, going to be a 3-bet facing a button open, and an open facing a button fold. Another small victory for the good guys. Immediately get rewarded with a king and a queen of different suits. And another small victory for the good guys. King 10 suited. Easy cutoff open. Easy defend facing a 3-bet from either player, but we are racking up the minuscule victories thus far in this play and explain. Once again, the mighty Ace-7 off in the small blind versus big blind. Going to be checking a lot out of position as the preflop raiser, small blind versus big blind. This hand's going to fit in pretty well as a check call with ace high. Once the flop checks through on the 3 of diamonds turn, we turn a wheel draw along with ace high. So we kind of got a little bit of showdown and a little bit of a draw. And we're just going to be essentially playing this hand, checking it down, hoping to beat villains just complete whiffs. Another very small victory. Pocket aces. Very nice. Facing what I kind of presume to be a white belt opening. Pretty easy 3-bet here. Facing a 4-bet, I think we're just going to get it in, especially, blocking villains' lower equity 4-bets like ace-jack and ace-10. Low jack versus high jack tends to be pretty tight positions, so really easy to assume or imagine that they're under 4-betting here, and yeah, just going to call it off at a decent clip, 65% of the time. There we go. Large victory. King 7 suited. Very nice solver approved hand. Flopping a flush draw on a paired board. Just going to start out by c-betting a third. So technically, I think villain's supposed to have a fair amount of check raises here. A lot of their like 9x type hands, King Jack, Jack 10, King 10 offsuit, and some of their flush draws. So anyway, just have a lot of equity, dominate a lot of their worst draws. So pretty easy spot to call and see what happens. Jack of spades on the turn, so this obviously gives me a flush and gives them queen jack off, like a boat that could go for a check raise. Can also give them second pair with their king jacks, could give them a straight with their king 10s and a pair with their jack 10s. Interestingly, I think I'm going to check behind on this specific turn and kind of make a determination on the river as to how many bets I want to play for, how I want to play. I actually don't think that facing a check raise is super great when I do bet the turn. I'm not sure that I have a hand that wants to play for all the money. I beat some lower flush draws, but like 10-8 of spades is kind of the lowest flush draw I beat, which is a straight flush. That's interesting. They need to have like 4 or 5 of spades, and then they need to call a raise with it. I think I'm just actually going to make a tight river call here, because I find it hard to imagine that they'll call a raise with, a queen or a low flush. Like, we're going to win a ton here, but yeah, I think it's actually too thin to jam, which is kind of wild to say. Dodged a bullet there. Ace 10 off. Way better than ace 7 off. Blind versus blind. If we get 3-bet, this will be a hand that we 4-bet. Top on 8, 9, 10. In a lot of cases, top would be a hand that I would bet. On this specific board, I believe I'm going to start out with a check. It's just a lot of villains, pair plus draws on the flop have roughly the same amount of equity as us, and so don't think we're pushing as much equity as you would think, even though it is blind versus blind. But after the flop checks through, now on the turn, 5 of hearts, we're going to go ahead and start out betting and play this for a 2-street value game had villain called the turn. Pocket 5s, we will be defending versus a 3-bet, and hopefully some good things will happen. That's a pretty good thing. I can imagine much worse things happening than flopping a set. Monotone board. I don't expect villain to c-bet here a ton. I think there's certainly cases to be made for raising. There's cases to be made for calling. I'm just going to call and kind of see what happens on the turn, and maintain some hands that can jam facing like a 70% turn bet if they decide to bet 70%. Facing half, so like it's really okay. So the question is, do I want to jam or do I want to call? On the one hand, you want to avoid the river 4 flush, but the river 4 flush doesn't come that often, about, 20% of the time. I think I'm just going to call, even though, I wanted to maintain some hands that I could potentially raise with on the turn. I think I'm just going to call, hopefully get villains like, king, queen of spades type hands to go ahead and put in the river jam. Queen jack of spades would be unfortunate, but kind of just is what it is. Nice. We give villains, pocket kings a chance to stack themselves as well. And yeah, this game was breaking. Nice way to end this table. Cutoff limp is pretty nice. Indicative that villain is likely a white belt. I think with ace 10 off, we're just going to 3-bet here. If it were suited, then I think I could, probably make a better argument for flatting due to, wanting the 4 seat to come tag along. But, my suspicion is that the 5 seat is, or could be, ISOing a bit wider, facing the 4 seat limp. And so attacking the 5 seat ISO just, going to be pretty good. And getting the king high dry flop and betting small and getting a fold is pretty nice too. Gonna put the expression deuces never loses to the test. Boom. Myth unbusted. King queen of clubs, gonna be quite the juicy squeeze. What size? So I want to go with this short stack. I think I'm going to size to 150. It's about half the short stack. Actually expect to get the 2 seat to fold quite frequently, so the fact that they snap call is a little bit worrisome, but getting ace is just really nice. So I'm going to start out with a quarter and then going to fire turns. Getting raised is like quite unexpected here. Makes me think, I feel like I'm in a quite the suspicious mood today. I'm gonna actually bet 3-bet and then be done with the hand. There's 600 in the pot, so I'm gonna risk about, I don't know, 460 to win 600. Needs to work 40-something% of the time, and I just think that they gotta be more than 40% full of shit. There we go. Ace 9 off is, I'm gonna peel. Getting such a good price, 7.5 to 1. Even though it's not a hand that plays well multi-way, and we are quite multi-way here. I'm a sucker for a Groupon discount. And like so many Groupon discounts that I've bought over the years, that leads me to minimal value. Queen 10 off, easy to defend from the big blind facing small blind open. That would be a straight. That would be a straight. Wow, and villain bets big. So villain's big bets here going to be, the equity-driven hands like king, queen, king 10, ace, king, 2-pair, sets, maybe pocket aces, and then kind of their bluffs are going to be like 10-8, ace 10, ace queen. I'm just going to raise. If you'll notice, the commonality in their bluffs were hands that have a queen and a 10 in them. So because we block their most natural bluffs of ace 10 and ace queen, just going to go ahead and start raising for value there. with the hope that, their bet is more value-driven. The fact that they snap folded, not super great for that theory, and can certainly, second guess and question whether or not I should have raised, but I'm actually totally fine with my decision. So just can't get all the values every time, and gotta be okay with that. Facing button limp, gonna certainly be raising for value here with my pocket sevens, and again, playing different flops accordingly. Flopping third pair, gonna start out with a check. Don't really see much value in doing anything other than checking. So start out with a check, and then facing this 1/3-ish size bet, gonna go ahead and call. Flush completer, not great, but not the end of the world. And again, facing a very small bet from what I suspect to be a white belt, we're just going to be, gritting our teeth and doing some calling down. Jack pairing is actually pretty nice for us. It would have been pretty nice for us had they not turned a flush, but reduces. When they bet the river, it makes it to where they're probably not betting a king for value as frequently as they would have had the jack not paired. So if they did bet the river, would have made them more polarized. And the fact that they check back a flush actually makes me feel really good about calling a river bet had they gone ahead and bet, because if they're not betting a flush, they're only betting boats, and it's just hard to make a boat. With the ace 7 of hearts, we're gonna defend and take it multi-way. We could squeeze. I think squeezing is quite nice here, but we're just gonna take it multi-way with our friend the 6 seat on board, and try to make something good and stack our opponent. It's gonna be my last orbit, so thank you for sticking around watching this Play and Explain. I'm Coach Brad Wilson. If you haven't yet subscribed to the Chasing Poker Greatness YouTube channel, I would go ahead and do that. Don't forget to ask any questions you may have about today's session. Love ISOing the 7-8 of spades. Don't love the King Queen 5 hearts flop. Multi-way, just not going to be betting on monotone, doing a ton of checking, including, my trashiest trash type hands like the 7-8 of spades on this board. I don't know if there's a point in the hand in which, I want to bluff. I do think that suited connectors like this are actually the worst hands that I have in my range. So they could be the first hands where I start pulling bluffs, but I could also bet like jacks and tens with a heart, so that I have, some kind of hope or some kind of equity when I bet. So I'm still just going to play, my 7-8 very passively. Quite an easy scenario to over bluff if you do start bluffing, and quite an easy scenario to under bluff too, right? It's very dicey with managing your bluffs on the turn, and rivering an 8. I don't think it helps me win that often, but I'm still just going to check, and I think bluffing would have got it done. That's going to do it for today's Play and Explain. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
This is Chasing Poker Greatness with your host, Brad Wilson. Coach Brad approved. Are you a lone wolf searching for the ultimate pack? The CPG Wolf program is a close-knit brotherhood hell-bent on one thing only: chasing poker greatness. Powered by bleeding-edge wolf strats and led by Coach Brad and his lieutenants, CPG Wolves are systematically prepared for almost any spot they'll encounter on the green felt. If you want to plug into an elite team and have a step-by-step game plan to realize your full poker potential, you can apply at cpgwolves.com. Space is limited, and the pack is only as strong as its weakest member. So only the hungriest, grittiest, and most driven will be accepted into the program. Applications are open at cpgwolves.com.